Welcome to USC Lead Live. Just 2 days left until we head to the polls to elect our new ASB executive. And on today's episode, we discuss why your vote counts. We are joined by Mr. Nikoli Edwards, youth advocate, social activist, and communication professional. Nikoli has served in many capacities at the University of the West Indies, including undergrad of student and as UWI Stat Ambassador. He is affiliated with several civil society organizations locally, regionally, and internationally, and served as co-chairperson of Trinidad and Tobago Advisory Group of the United Nations Population Fund and the founder and executive chairperson of Trinidad and Tobago Youth Convention. Youngest independent senator in Trinidad and Tobago, youngest member of the Procurement Board of Trinidad and Tobago, and the recipient of the Trinidad and Tobago 2018 National Youth Award for Youth Activism. Mr. Edwards has also held the international title of Vice Chairperson, Policy, Advocacy, and Projects of Commonwealth Youth Council, which represents 1.2 billion young people. In 2019, he launched his Progressive Party and served as a political leader. Nikoli contested the San Fernando West seat in the 2020 general elections, seeking to provide a variable alternative to governance in Trinidad and Tobago. Nikoli, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you have heard quite a bit of Nikoli and his experience in leadership and governance in different contexts. Based on this, why do you think student governance is important?
I think that student governance is important because it gives a sense on campus or within the university community to understand how you go about selecting leadership. Quite often, I think leadership is thrown on us in terms of positions, persons holding office, and so forth. But when you get a chance to be a part of a democratic process to elect someone that you believe would represent your interests, I think that is something very powerful. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the time, when it comes to elections, many people don't pay attention to policy and positions and so forth. It's usually a popularity competition. But I think that once persons are seriously interested, once they want to see betterment for themselves, whether on campus or being connected to other alumni and stuff, elections are so very important, and participating in that process is extremely important to upholding democracy.
All right. So, question. How can student governance contribute to the overall development of an individual?
Because it deals with your experience being a part of a university. So the student body is there to advocate on your behalf. Usually, as a student, you may have sometimes run-ins with lecturers. You may have issues with certain things. There may be incidents on campus, and you need a voice. You need someone to represent you, because we have these hierarchical systems where it's very difficult many a times for a student to simply walk into the principal's office or the president's office and say, well, this is my concern. There are various channels, but some of those channels are designed in a sense to not have the floodgates open and just everybody rushing into the office. So you have representatives who you carry your concerns, your issues to, and they know how to channel that up the line. And of course, they would be attending meetings. They understand the inner workings of the university. So you're not left out in the wilderness. You are supposed to have that student leader, that body, to help you with your experience on campus, to fight for betterment of the environment on campus, and different things.
All right, interesting. But question, right? So that there's some students who may just be hesitant in participating or serving on the student governance. What would you say to those students?
Sure. Well, I mean, the fears of students are something that you can't discount, because I know there have been many a times where you hear students being elected to different bodies and they're thieving the money and they're spending it on all kinds of superfluous things, and you're not getting the kind of representation that you really need or what you voted for. So it is very important for us to be able to hold one another accountable, all right? And those systems have to be built in to really get the best out of the experience. But I have to say to students who are feeling jaded by the whole election process and all of these things, that not voting should not be top of your list. Despite what would have occurred in the past, you have to look at the individuals who are coming forth now and determine whether you think they will be a good fit or not. And the only way you can do that is by listening. So a lot of the times, the students who are ignorant to the electoral process and what the student body does and all of these things, they are the ones who most likely will not vote. And there has to be a program or a campaign in place to raise awareness, much like how we're having this conversation, because you will have students listening in and they may well learn from this conversation, oh, I didn't know the student body did that, or I didn't know this could have happened. So information is very important, and it can't just be put on the candidates themselves to go and apprise persons of the election and why it's important. There has to be a system that is almost independent, independent individuals who will public service announcements, in a sense, to get that information as to why it is important to get involved. So I will not encourage anyone to not participate. Take the opportunity, because it's the same thing when we look on a larger level. You see whomsoever becomes prime minister of the country, and you're complaining, well, look what's going on here, look what's going on there, but did you vote? Did you go out and participate in the process? So unfortunately, that's kind of a setup where if you didn't vote, you take what you get. So people have to bear that in mind, because your vote matters. It really could be the distinguishing factor between candidate A and candidate B, but you have to get involved.
Correct. And I completely agree with you. And so we see the importance of going out and voting for who you think should be the next best candidate. Well, some students think that their voices may be irrelevant, and so that's some of the reasons why they may not vote. But Mr. Nikoli is here encouraging us to go out and vote, because our vote matters. All right, so our team has been campaigning, and although everything is virtual and for this year, right, there is a thick sense of competition between the candidates. And it's easy for students to vote based on persons who they think are more popular or they are more familiar with. But my question is, what are the 3 top qualities that you will look for within a particular leader?
Sure.
So 3 top qualities.
Yeah. For one, you have to have effective communication skills. Now, effective communication skills does not necessarily mean that you have to sound the most eloquent and these things, but you should be able to communicate a message, because essentially that's what you're doing as a student leader. You are taking the message from the student body, the students, the population there, and you are transmitting that to admin. All right, and of course you are going to be one who is focused on understanding what is the real problem. And if you don't have communication skills, these things will fly over your head. All right, so communication skills is very important. You have to be someone who can multitask. That is extremely important, because aside from the huge task and responsibility of attaining your degree, and we know how that goes, all the stress and strain where that is concerned, you now are taking on another role of being responsible for persons. And if you cannot multitask, if you cannot continue to keep your grades up, and at the same time be an effective communication, an effective student leader, then essentially you may fail at both tasks. So you have to develop those kinds of skills. And I think the third thing really is that you have to be someone who is really people-centered. It has to be about the student body. It cannot be about yourself as an individual, because you will fail. People will see through that. And especially if you are seeking a next term and a next election, going back up for the same spot or another one, people will remember what you did or what you did not do. So communication skills, multitasking, and being people-centered.
All right, good. So there are three important skills that we need to look for within a particular leader. So then how would you rank networking, capability, popularity, and communication?
Okay, so but networking is extremely important. So it's networking. Give me it one more time.
So it's networking, capability, popularity, and communication.
All right. So I think capability has to be first and foremost. Then you would have networking potentially right after that, because if you are not able to develop a good network, and a good network would include members of your team, because essentially you're not going in there as an individual. You may have a committee behind you, you may have persons who might be an assistant, what have you, and a team is very important. But also, I can tell you, at least from my experience being on the guild at UE, being able to network was so important, because at any point in time I could have called a member of admin and say this is an issue here, but at the same time outside of campus I could have made certain calls to bring certain services to campus. So that is extremely important. I think that the popularity aspect would be last on the list.
Correct.
Because popularity doesn't really determine how effective your leadership skills would be. Not because you like someone, not because she look nice or he look good, and these things, that's not going to get you very far. So the second to last one would have been communication skills. And again, it's not foregoing the ones before, but adding to it, because once you're able to network, once you're able to really relate to people, communication is just the icing on the cake.
And I totally agree with you. Most people vote based on popularity, but do they have the necessary skills, capabilities to carry out the function? And so guys, here you have it. We're not voting for popularity, but remember, it's more capability, networking, people person, as you say, communication skills, very important.
And if I could just say, in terms of the popularity aspect, if we look at Trinidad and Tobago now, or across the Caribbean, you would have what many people consider to be a two-party system, yeah? And essentially you would have the two, it's almost a duopoly that exists. What you have to pay attention to is those parties that are on the fringe, those individuals, those independent candidates, because they may have a lot to offer, but the problem is that they're not popular, because they are starting to do something much like myself with the Progressive Party. Unfortunately, we were not able to make the kind of traction that we would have wanted to, but I can tell you that it was significant nonetheless. And we did this with very little resources. But it was because we had a good command of communication and effectively utilizing the media and so forth. But if attention were to be placed on those individuals that were not popular, but their policies were strong, their positioning was strong, we may have different governance systems across the Caribbean. We may see a lot more productivity. We may see the kind of transformation that is necessary. So of course we could apply that whole trend of thought to this election here at USC, because you want to ensure you have the best candidate, not because we know John is lying with everybody and he always playing football here and this, that, and the other. It does not make him the best leader. So we have to, it's our duty to listen to all the voices and make a sensible decision based on that.
And you know, that brings me to my next question. This question is very interesting. So I know, based on your past experiences, you had similar experiences with student governance and political governance. And what is the similarity between both of them, with student governance and political governance?
I mean, everything. I don't think that it's inextricable. I think that much the same way, because we see our university campuses as really microcosms of the society. And that was glaring when it came to UE. So I recognize that, okay, running for election to stand as a student representative, you go about things in almost the same fashion on a larger scale. But of course, there are different rules that you have to play by. But the idea or the genesis is really the same. you have to run a campaign, put yourself out there, you sign up and all of that, and you have to go out and talk to people. You can't expect to sit in a corner or in a room and just probably put out one flyer or something and expect people to listen and want to support you. So I've recognized that it was an easy transition for me personally, moving from student governance to national politics, because I had wet my feet in the student governance arena,
Right.
so to say. So I went into it understanding some basic things. Not everyone is going to like you. You can have the best ideas out and some people just not on you, you understand? So you have to really and truly prepare yourself mentally for that journey, because you may look at it and think, well, it's just a little student body elections, but no. From that day onward, your face is going to be noticeable on campus. People are going to know who you are, whether they're shoo-shooing in the class and saying, well, that's the boy who run for so-and-so, or she had run for this. You have put yourself out there, so you have to prepare yourself mentally for that journey. And I think that anyone who's interested in national politics, a good place to start would be a student body election. And even things such as joining NGOs and participating, because you want to be out in the community and wet your feet in those instances to try to get an understanding of the kind of larger responsibility that would come should you decide to go the route of national elections.
So what I'm gathering from you now is, because you started from the student body governance, it aid you in progressing to the governance ahead.
Significantly.
Likewise, the students is going to significantly benefit from this experience. All right, awesome. So as we move along in our discussion, there is a general concern out there that the student body and the student governance team isn't real. There is a gap between the student body and the governance team. Now, what do you think are some of the strategies that we can use or to implement to narrow this gap between the student body and the student governance?
Sure. Well, one thing, you definitely have to have a direct channel to get to the students. While I was public relations officer or secretary of the guild, one of the two, I decided that we, as a student body, guild of students, we had to have a direct channel almost to students. And admin already had that direct channel through emails, because you would have all the student emails. But we would have to write whatever post or whatever we wanted to put out to the student body, go to marketing and communications. They had to, in a sense, approve it and go through all of that process. And I felt as though if we are the student representatives, we should be able to speak directly to the students. And so I put in a request, I fought for it, and the guild got official emails, and we were able to send emails directly to the student body. Now, the fact is that admin trusted me, because I think that I was very clear in what the intention was and all of these things. So they had it in their mind that we can trust Nikoli with these emails. But when it comes to other persons who will come in the role after him, we really have to take it case by case. And unfortunately, sometime after I left, I moved on from the guild, that was kind of taken away. So you have to have built-in systems to reach out to the student body. If you're using Facebook, if you're using groups or what have you, those are mechanisms. But of course, you have to be present on campus. With COVID and all these changes, that's very difficult. But navigate the virtual space. So having discussions such as this, streaming it live, sending it out to the student population ahead of time. You can have a show, well, where you bring in students and you keep them engaged, but it's not simply to tell the students, well, this is what we're going to do, but asking students to kind of go on the record and say, what do you want out of your experience? It has to be about listening. It has to be about listening. And from the time that you talk more than you listen, you're going to running into problems. So, yeah.
It brings us back to the characteristics of communication again. So the leader must have or possess good communication skills. All right, so thus far there are manifestos and various plans from different parties or different student groups. And we would like you to tell us, how can we as a student hold the ASB accountable for the manifestos and the plans that they put out there?
Yeah, well, that's an ongoing process. You have to have students who don't show bias. all right? But who can actually dissect these manifestos and recognize, well, okay, if you said in your first 100 days or whatever it is, we tend to set these milestones. You are not seeing any progress on this particular issue, you should be writing to the student representative and saying, well, I'm not seeing X, Y, and Z, and this is what you promised, and this is why I voted for you. So essentially, if you're not delivering on that, then explain to me, why did I vote for you? And we have to be brave enough to say this, because when student representatives or potential student representatives come to us asking for a vote, they come with confidence. They say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm promising, and so forth. And you have to meet them with the same energy. Yeah, you have to be the one that goes and says to them, no matter if they think you're annoying, because I mean, we tend to see some students who are always coming up and everything like salt, but that is still good, because it shows how interested they are in getting good governance. And so we have to see all students as leaders, and we have to take into consideration what they are saying. So a student has to have that confidence to come forth and take the leadership to task, and the leadership should not be one to take easy offense to anything, because this is the arena you're getting yourself into. You have to have thick skin. You have to not allow things to throw you off. Everything that comes to you has to be seen as constructive criticism, no matter how hard it hits. It has to be seen as, okay, this is something that I can look at internally and improve upon. So I would encourage all students to understand these students are working for you. So you should never be afraid or ashamed to approach them. And one of the things as well, these students who run and are unsuccessful, and they make the statements that, well, even if I'm not elected, I will still help out or work, hold them accountable too. Don't just allow them to fall by the wayside, because they clearly have something to offer, and they cannot be bitter as a result of an election not going their way. So hold your elected officials accountable, but also hold the other candidates who said that they have something to offer to the campus and to the student body, so that you have the benefit of all persons coming forth, and use all of their manifestos as really a way to look at how the next term, the next semester, what have you, would look, and just be on them at all times.
I see. I was attempting to ask you a question, but then let's just leave it at that. So, we know that you have been actively involved in leadership roles, and you are part of the governance, well, your political party, etc. Can you share with us some of the lessons, share with us some of the lessons that you have learned along your journey? Were there any hiccups? How can the leaders of these student body groups know how to move forward?
All right, so one of the things that I'll just jump straight at is when I actually was in Parliament as an independent senator, on the outside you would have a certain perception of what or how these parties would carry about themselves, the opposition and the main regime would carry about themselves. And you would think that, they are always at each other's throats, and yes, they are virtual enemies, so to say. And I remember attending, I think it would have been my first session in Parliament, and when we went on the tea break, now prior to the tea break, during the debate and everything, you're seeing this one going at that one and saying all kinds of crazy things. And as soon as the cameras went off for the tea break and everyone was going upstairs to eat, people from other sides was saying, hey, yeah, come on, hold in the elevator, open for you, and this, that, and the other, and they were laughing. And that kind of struck a chord with me, because I was thinking, people on the outside are feeding off of the energy that you guys put out there. And if really and truly you're not enemies as is being portrayed, but people on the ground are taking on that fight and are seeing red and yellow as being opposites and this, that, and the other, that is setting a bad precedent. And I think that we can be, as Obama said, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable in terms of how we approach and interact with one another. So that definitely has to change, but it gave me a wake-up call. It made me realize that in some respects, for some people it's a big game, but you have people's lives in balance, and you cannot afford to play games with people's lives. while I was on the procurement board of Trinidad and Tobago, one of my concerns was that being the youngest member on the procurement board, I would be kind of seen as a last resort to give my opinion and so forth, but I can tell you that my opinion was just as respected as the doctor, as this one, as that one, and that made me feel, it made me feel hopeful. Hopeful, especially for young people, because if I had that experience, and granted, not everyone has that kind of experience, then more young people coming up would have an easier time to be a part of the decision-making process in the country, and really engage that process and feel confident that they will be able to make some progress. And then really and truly the last thing, going up for actual elections in San Fernando West, it made me realize that there was still a lot for me to learn. And you know, a lot of people say, well, you have to get more experience and this. We hear this as young people all the time, but how am I going to get experience without getting experience?
Correct.
It just doesn't make sense. As we say, the maths are mathsing. So we have to really and truly provide opportunities and spaces for persons to get that kind of training if they are particularly looking at heading down that path. So I'm very happy that I contested San Fernando West. Unfortunately, I was not successful at the polls, but it was an experience that really, I think, is preparing me for 2025, when I will be running again. Yeah? So.
All right. So we're looking out for your party in 2025 again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Mr. Edwards, what would you say, or what words of encouragement would you leave with those students who are running up for the 2021-2022 ASB?
You have to put yourself in the shoes of the electorate. You have to really and truly be one that says, if I were to look at my campaign as a student, would I be happy with it? Are these the issues that are being put on the front burner, the actual issues that matter to me as a student? Because it's very easy for us to write nice manifestos. It's very easy for us to come out and talk big words and say, this is what we're going to do. But a lot of the times, we don't even know how we're going to do it. And you're not giving any explanation. So you say we're going to construct, I don't know, a basketball court. Where you getting the money?
Right.
Who is going to do this?
Right.
Have you already sought approval or understand the process? So we have to really and truly not necessarily be conservative in the things that we promise, but we have to be one that understands that I'm here for a particular period of time. What are the top priorities? How can we really make progress on these things? And I think that once candidates are genuine, and that's something that we really have to pay attention to. How genuine are persons? Now, there isn't an index that we can easily put, or is not a multiple choice, and at the end of it, you would recognize, well, this person is genuine, or 50% genuine and 50% not. It doesn't work like that. You have to feel out people. How do you feel them out? You take them to task. You ask them questions. You ask them how. When there are student forums and so forth, and they're saying they're going to do X, Y, and Z, ask them how, and don't be afraid. I think it's that fear of asking, because we feel as though we might be talked down to, or the response might be condescending, and we don't want to get embarrassed and all of that. It refrains us from putting our necks out there. But these are persons who are going to form the student body, the governance system, and who are going to be responsible for your experience. And so we have to take them to task, and we have to be very clear about the things that are possible on campus, because the fact is, you're not going to have $10 million sitting on in a bank account for you to spend as you so please.
Correct.
So those things we have to really temper what we put out there, and yeah, I think that really and truly would give students confidence in those individuals. But I also want to say, if you lose, don't consider yourself a failure. This may have been your first time running in such an election, and whether it was a difference of 20 votes or 500 votes or whatever the case is, the fact is that you went through that fire and you came out a different person, because the experience is going to change you. Make no mistake about that. You may develop your confidence, you may develop your public speaking skills, negotiation skills, all of these things. So really and truly, don't see your unsuccessful attempt as being a total failure. Again, as I was saying earlier, from that day onward, people are going to know who you are on campus if they didn't know before. Because now they know a name, they know the face, they know what you're involved in because you're putting all your business out there because you want them to see a genuine candidate. So it is just the start of something much bigger. I can tell you, when I was at UWI, I first ran for Faculty of Humanities and Education representative. I was able to win that, and we had a PRO, which is an elected, appointed position. Mm-hmm. But our PRO, he resigned from the position, and they asked me to hold on in that position as well. So I was holding on for both FHE rep and PRO simultaneously. After that, I ran for secretary of the guild, and I was successful there. It was a tough fight, so much so that the other candidate thought that she won and started celebrating, only to realize that no, the results went in my favor. So that was a big boo-boo there.
All right.
And then after that, I ran for president, and I was not successful as president. But coming after that, the next student body asked me to serve as PRO because, remember, as I said, it's an appointed position. And thereafter, I was appointed as an independent senator, and thereafter, I was appointed to the Procurement Board of Trinidad and Tobago. So many opportunities opened up, and it was as a result of me really putting myself out there, getting the skills and the experience to take me forward. So you have to see it as really lessons being learned. You have to take it as an experience to grow, to develop yourself as an individual. And once you have that kind of mindset, I don't think you could ever see yourself as a failure, because they say it's not a loss, it's a lesson. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And that's the kind of approach that we have to take moving forward if we are serious about continuing to engage in this kind of a space.
All right, so we want to thank you for your inputs that you have given to us today. Food for thought. And for those who are listening, I just want to remind you that your vote counts, and we would like you to, even though you're not going out, but we would like you to go online and vote for the next best ASB executive. Remember, your vote always matters to us. Go out and vote for ASB 2021. Remember, election day is on April 15th. April 15th, that would be on Friday, I believe. Thursday, that would be on Thursday. So election day is on Thursday, April 15th. Visit usc.edu.tt/ASB for elections day instructions. Remember to vote ASB.
Thanks.
You've been searching. You've been seeking. And you've been looking for something you didn't know you needed. Well, guess what? It's not just you. Your hub for everything USC Strong. Valley Voice Media. Coming soon.